Hello again, this is Sam Medina here at One Accord Lubbock. I want to thank you once again for joining us in this study of Psalm 26. We have diverted our study to Psalm 84 because it complements what King David was feeling when he had been done wrong, and how instead of running away from God, he chose to go to God's temple, and not just for help, but to worship and to praise and to glorify God. And he tells God that he requests of God never to take that away from him. He says, God, just let me be at your house. I long to be there, where I can sense and feel the presence of your glory. He wanted to be where God's central place was, that is the temple, so that he could feel God's glory. And that doesn't mean that that's the only place he would feel it, but it was with purpose that he and others would go there to praise and worship God. And as they felt that God was receiving their praise and their worship, they could sense the satisfaction of God and his glory there. And so here we also look at somebody else. It wasn't just King David. There were many, many, many others that felt the same way. Psalm 84 is one of those psalms. Last week we talked about how the psalmist would say, goodness, even the birds have the privilege of building a nest in the outer courts, perhaps, like I said, where the wood was for burnt offerings, or perhaps under an eave of some kind, they would build a nest. And he says they have the privilege of raising their young there. He says, oh, he's somewhat jealous, if you will. Oh, he's not jealous. He's just saying, if I could be just like those birds, I would trade where I am today to be able to do what they do and be near God's temple, even if it's just on the outside in the courts, the outer courts. And then as we continue reading this, well, let's just read that part. It says, even the sparrow has found a home, and the swallow a nest for herself, where she may, listen to this, lay her young. Wow. Where it says, even your altars, O Lord of hosts, my King and my God. He says, I just want to be like them, close to your altars. Perhaps it's the altars of sacrifice, the altars of the burnt offerings. It says, if I could just be there like them. They've built their nests there, close to your altars. He wanted to be at God's altar. You know, there's times when people here at One Accord will come and they'll approach the front part of the sanctuary, and they'll go kneel and they'll go pray and they worship. And I'll tell you, you can feel God's presence. Just feel the presence of the Lord. What a wonderful feeling. And it's the same God, the exact same one that Psalm 84 is referring to, and the same one that these people, making their ascent up into Jerusalem, they were going up because of the elevation of Jerusalem. It's just the same God. And these people were saying the same thing I'm telling you. There's something about being in God's house. It's an amazing thing. And look what else he says. Right here, this part of the psalm, he's going to be talking about the pilgrimage, the voyage there. He says, blessed are those who dwell in your house. They will still be praising you. He says, oh, I can't wait to get there. When we get there, we're going to sing and we're going to praise. And once we get there, I can't wait for that. It says, blessed is the man whose strength is in you, whose heart is set on the pilgrimage. He's saying, look, God, it's a long way there. This pilgrimage from where we've come to where we're going, it's a long, long way. He says, but if their strength is in you, it's not going to be a problem. Why? Look at the next verse. Verse 6, as they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a spring. The valley of Baca was a very arid area. It was dry. It was on the way to Jerusalem, and it was arid. There was desert, if you will. And it was not an easy place to cross, but the psalmist just said, our strength is in you, God. And that is, your strength is ours, and we can make it through the valley of Baca. Baca the word also means weeping. Have you ever gone through a desert in your life? Have you ever gone through a time of weeping? Have you ever gone through a time that you just don't know what to do? Well, let me tell you, just like this psalmist says, blessed is the man whose strength is in you. That is, the strength of their life is God himself. Down here, he's going to call him a shield later on. And I don't know what goes on in your life. I don't know what's happening. But one of the things you can do is get joyful about going to God's house. And let him be your strength as you make your way to God's house throughout this week, even no matter what hits you, no matter what's been hitting you, no matter who's done you wrong, no matter what the problem is. You start thinking, God, you give me the strength because I want to be in your house. And I want to go praise you, and I want to go worship you. You be my strength for me to do that. And he says, and you just tell him, God, I may be going through my valley of Baca, that dry, arid, desert, lifeless life right now, the one that takes my sleep away, the one that ruins my appetite, that life. God, help me. You be my strength. You be the one that makes me get through this. And that's what he's saying is on their way there. Then he says, as they pass through the valley of Baca, they make it a spring. I guess the most common example of that would be the phrase, if life hands you a lemon, turn it into lemonade. And that's what he's saying. He says, God will help me do that. And then he goes on to say, they go from strength to strength. Each one appears before God in Zion. That is, it says, God is my strength. And when I get attacked in this valley of Baca, when I'm feeling weak, I go from strength now to the strength that God gives me every day. Strength to strength. And why? Because I'm imagining, he says, being before God's temple and being before him and worshiping him at the temple. And then, I guess, my favorite verse, for a day in your courts is better than 1,000 others. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. What? For a day in your courts is better than 1,000 elsewhere. I would rather be a doorkeeper in the house of my God than dwell in the tents of wickedness. He's saying, look, I would rather be able to have the position of doorkeeper, even if I couldn't go in the temple, just to be near it, just to be the person that opens and closes the doors, the gates, the gatekeeper. Even if if I was just close to the temple and close to God's altars, where I could see what was happening and participate, even from the door, even if not allowed to go in. Oh, I would rather have that, it says, for one day than the rest of my life in the tents of other people, just fellowshipping and doing all these other things with them. I'd rather have one day. It says that's more valuable. What he's saying is, to my life and in my life, being close to God is more valuable than anything else that I can find on this earth. Now, this isn't King David, but King David felt the exact same way. He felt the exact same way. He desired to be around God. And he would ask God, please don't take me being at the temple away from you, or from me rather. Please, Father, I just want to be with you. And here the psalmist is saying, God, please, even if I don't get to go in, let me be close. What would happen if you changed your life and you made up your mind that church is going to be important to you, that you're going to go, and not because you're giving them the privilege of your presence, but because you are walking into that temple, that church, very humbly, saying, I am here for one purpose. I am here to praise and to worship God, to show the world that it is still important that we come together and render worship to God, that it is important that my family see that, and that it is important that I tell the rest of the world church still matters. And I hope that that's going to be in your heart. I hope that you'll do that. I hope that you'll long to do what the psalmist says. I'd rather have one day, even as a doorkeeper in God's temple, than the rest of my life elsewhere. Well, God obviously will give you more than one day. And in fact, as a child of God, you are now encouraged to approach his temple boldly. Christ had not come yet when this was written. Christ has now come, has been crucified, has been buried, and he's resurrected. And then he tells us to approach his throne boldly, where we can come and not just go to the temple, but all the way to his throne. And we can approach him boldly, where we can find mercy and grace in time of need. Let church be relevant to you. Let it be important to you. And you'll see what difference it'll make in your life. God bless you.